I'll answer the question. You want answers?
I think I'm entitled.
You want answers?
I want the truth!
You can't handle the truth!
Welcome back to Thinking Critical. This is Wes, and it's time to talk about the second week of DC Comics Future State. Now, this week is much more in line with what I kind of anticipated from Future State, not nearly as good as the first week. There's one comic that I thought was pretty damn good. I reviewed it on the channel yesterday. That was Dark Detective. There's another one that I definitely recommend. I enjoyed it. But the other five this week, there's all kinds of things going on with them. There's one theme that's universal throughout Future State, and I'm getting it kind of even from the first week, is you're really just being dropped in the middle of a lot of things, and they're kind of talking about history that you don't know about. There's also conflicting stories about characters within Future State. I'm not always certain what year the story that I'm taking place in is reading. They haven't made that abundantly clear, so it makes kind of a bit of a confusing mess just kind of all around, especially the titles that are supposed to connect, your Batman titles, your Superman titles. And I think that's it's a misstep on DC's part not to give you a visual illustration of when these stories are actually taking place, because it's becoming confusing. I shouldn't have to go to that DC Nation's DC Future State timeline to figure out when the hell this story is taking place and why things aren't kind of connecting, just in my mind. Now, like I already mentioned, there are two comics I definitely recommend. There's three that I would kind of call middling, like on the precipice of a recommend, and two of them that were really bad. Pause the video right now if you'd like to, and let me know in the comments section which two comics. Obviously, I gave one of them away with Dark Detective. Do you think I thought were really good? I'll give you a hint. That Justice League cover that's on the thumbnail is not in the bottom two. That's right in the middle of the kind of middling stuff. And then the two comics that I really dislike. There are a couple of people that got it last time spot on, and I thought that was pretty fun. Now, before I get into the details and my thoughts on all the offerings from Future State this week, I do want to say, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, subscribe, hit the bell for notifications, give me a thumbs up if you enjoy this, give me a thumbs down if you don't. Either way, I want to hear from you guys. What do you think about Future State's second week? Was there any titles you thought were hot that I didn't like, or any titles that I didn't like that you thought were great? Wait, that's exactly the same thing. Whatever. Let me know in the comments section. Now, getting to the first recommendation, this is easily the best comic book from Future State this week. I would put this one probably a skosh below Swamp Thing from last week, right, kind of on par with Wonder Woman. It is Dark Detective from Mariko Tamaki. She served up a heaping of crow this week with Dan Mora on art. Now, I knew Dan Mora would do perfectly well on art, but he certainly exceeded some expectations. We finally got that setting that we were expecting from Gotham, from the Future State covers. This is the cyberpunk Gotham. The setting was great. It was a cool story. I really enjoyed seeing what happened with Bruce Wayne. There is an awesome 5 or 6 page action sequence that's depicted here on the right, where Bruce Wayne is discovered by the magistrate. He's obviously on the run. Everyone thinks he's dead, and they're just going at it, going through Gotham, and it's a lot of fun. There are a couple of issues with it as far as why does anyone think Bruce Wayne is dead if you haven't shown the body? That's neither here nor there. It's comic books. I guess you got to accept some things, but there's definitely a vibe to this series. There's an ever-present danger of the magistrate, of Peacekeeper 1, the Watching Eye, and Bruce Wayne. Can he escape, his own fates? Everyone knows who Bruce Wayne is in Gotham. Although I don't quite 100% get the time factor. Is he supposed to have been dead for 3 days here? They're mentioning in other comics in Future State that Bruce Wayne is dead. Is he going to be dead at the end of this comic book? It almost feels that way. Now, I don't want to get too deep into this one. There was a backup story for Grifter. I think that was completely unnecessary. The $6 price tag does hamper this because you get 24 pages of good story, then you get another 24 pages of story you didn't want. Now, the other comic that I am recommending this week, not as good as Dark Detective, but certainly a fun comic, is Green Lantern from Geoffrey Thorne with Tom Raney on art. I'm going to mention up front, I do not like Tom Rainey's art personally. It feels like he's going for a Freddie Williams II style, but he hasn't quite gotten there yet. This feels more akin probably to a He-Man comic And I think the graphics would probably work better there. I don't think they really fit what DC Comics has presented as Green Lantern art in the past. But beyond that, it's not really a Green Lantern story, which is probably the reason that it's not a highly recommended, because it is a really fun story. And it's action-packed, and you are dropped in the middle of something, but it is very enjoyable. But there are no Green Lantern rings. There are no Green Lanterns left. Apparently, they've all lost the rings, and we're seeing the last remnants of the Lantern Corps. They're still together, and they're still trying to free planets. Losing the aspect of the Green Lantern, Corps and the rings, like, is it a Green Lantern book if you don't have Green Lantern powers and you don't have Green Lantern rings? I don't know, but it is enjoyable. It's fun. I think Geoffrey Thorne is taking us for a fun ride here. Obviously, he's only got 2 issues to work with. John Stewart is definitely front and center in this comic book. He is the star. So if you're a John Stewart fan, you're probably going to enjoy this. But that cover is false advertising. You will see no versions of those characters, although maybe Kilowog. He does have a weird. There is a part with Kilowog in here that I thought was strange. I don't want to see Kilowog crying. You know what I mean? Other than that, it's pretty good. There's some backup stories. There's a Jessica Cruz backup story in here that, again, you have to believe somehow that Jessica Cruz is some type of like aeronautical engineer or something. Like she's managing an entire space station solo. That is not at any point part of her character history. It doesn't feel like it's feasible for her to even do that. And then she destroys some Yellow Lanterns, and it's highly hinted at that she is accepting the Yellow Lantern ring at the end. There's also a third story about Guy Gardner. He's believed to be a prophet or something, and he like opens up a bar, and it lasts for 25 years. Did not like that story. That one was the biggest waste. But the main story is fun. If you like Green Lantern, if you like space adventure, you're gonna like this comic book. I definitely recommend it. Now, getting into the stuff that I didn't think was so good. There's parts of it you could recommend, but there's definitely a lot of stuff that's wrong with them. I would say the best of this middle tier is Robin and Turtle from Megan Fitzmartin, not a writer I'm personally familiar with, and Eddie Barrows on art. Eddie Barrows is definitely the best thing about this. Although at the beginning, his art's a little stiff. Like his Tim Drake is not the greatest, but after a few pages, it definitely picks up. This is a fun action comic, but again, you're being like dropped in the middle of something. Like, why does Tim Drake Robin have like a cloaking suit, and why does Spoiler have one eye, and why is she even in Gotham? It sounds like she retired, but she just decided to show up and visit Tim Drake as he's about to go on this big mission. And there's another character that he's fighting with named Darcy. Not personally familiar with her, but it sounds like just from the text that she's from the Robin network in the past. Now, the big thing in here is that the magistrate have visited the Lazarus pits, and they have something called Lazarus resin. And if they mix it with these big robots called cybers, they will become immortal, and no one will ever be able to stop them. And Tim Drake has to infiltrate this train with the Lazarus resin and stop it before it gets to Gotham, and the cybers are beefed up on Lazarus resin, or else all hope will be lost. This obviously is taking place in the future of Gotham. It's weird in this one. He's talking about Dick Grayson is in like Arkham, like in the loony bin, like he's absolutely insane. But in Teen Titans, Dick Grayson's like with the Titans. I don't think the stories are actually all that far apart. I found that really confusing. Like I said, they need to get some timestamps on these comic books, and so some things can make a lot more sense. And they're once again referencing a lot of history that you don't understand, that you never read, and it's hard to kind of keep up with sometimes. But this is fun. It's an action comic. It's a train robbery. Who doesn't like a train robbery? I absolutely do. Now, like I said, this comic does have some issues with it, but if you like Tim Drake, you might like this comic. We don't get to see Tim Drake all that often in DC Comics, but far from the worst comic this week. I'll definitely give you this one. Now, the next one that would be up would be the in that middle tier would be Justice League. A little bit disappointed. I thought Joshua Williamson on the Justice League title would be dynamite. I was like, okay, finally we got an established writer on a big team book. Ought to be pretty damn good. I would hesitate with the pretty damn good. It's pretty average to below average. Once again, you don't know all these characters, and there are characters that are going to be in Future State, but you haven't even met him yet. Like, I don't know who A.D. Curry is. How am I supposed to care about that character? Like, at the very beginning, you get introduced to the new Legion of Doom. And they don't make it. Like, why did you introduce us to all these characters? Just so you could kill them off the next page. Seems like a pretty big waste. There's a lot of talking in this comic book. It's a lot about interpersonal relationships, even though they're not supposed to know each other. Like, the first rule of Justice League is you do not tell people who you are. You do not tell your teammates who you are for fear of something very bad happening. They talk about in the past, someone that was a part of the Justice League got all their information and destroyed their lives, destroyed the league, and it's been rebuilt with new rules. As soon as they tell you this rule, guess what they do? Guess what the Justice League do? The very next page, you see John Kent, Superman, and Yara 4, Wonder Woman, talking to each other, saying, hey, Yara, hey, John. Obviously, most people probably know who John Kent is. They're not hiding their identities. They're buddies. They're hanging out, which they're not supposed to do. They're not supposed to be hanging out or fraternizing after hours, after Justice League hours. And then the next page, who's hanging out? Andy Curry and Jess Chambers. And they're like having a sandwich together. Be like, yeah, we're not supposed to be doing this. And then there's a big murder mystery component to it, which was really drawn out. The biggest drawback in this comic book, and I don't think the story is all that good, it's kind of meandering, kind of like my review here, is when they introduce the new Batman, he's the Batman who saved Gotham, unlike, Bruce Wayne could. And when they introduce Joe Mullins, the Green Lantern, guess what she is? The greatest detective in the history of the multiverse. So of course, she's better than Bruce Wayne as the world's greatest detective. It makes me give a big eye roll and just stop making me hate your characters. Stop trying to tell me how much better they are than the established characters. If it happens, it happens. But you try to force it, and you piss me off, and you make me think I don't like the character. There is a big reveal at the end, and I think most people probably will like. But it took a long time to get there. And they're breaking all the rules. And it feels like there was a lot of wasted space in this comic book. There is a backup story, Justice League Dark by Ram V. I was pretty excited about that one. There's some interesting stuff with Detective Chimp, but otherwise I found it to be a bit nondescript, which is a bit disappointing. But Ram V obviously will be writing the Justice League backup stories for the Justice League series behind Brian Michael Bendis once Infinite Frontier begins. I imagine it'll be much better because his Justice League Dark work, prior to Future State was pretty solid. The last book I'll throw in this middle tier is the Teen Titans book. Another one that I was pretty let down by. The art in this is probably the second best art to Dan Mora this week. Rafa Sandoval has some great art, but there's some really weird stuff going on here. They don't want to talk about it. They're telling you something's happening, but they don't want to tell you what it is. So it becomes a bit frustrating as a read, just to me personally. There's a new status quo, but with the Teen Titans, it appears that Starfire is in charge. Dick Grayson is no longer in charge, but he doesn't want to be called Dick Grayson anymore. I think he's the new Deathstroke, that he's no longer Nightwing, but he's got kind of a Nightwing or Deathstroke thing going on, but he's also wearing Nightwing stuff. So it was a bit confusing. Also, like I mentioned previously in the Robin Eternal story, he's supposed to be in the Arkham Asylum loony bin in crazy and all nuts and stuff. But apparently there was a cataclysmic event on Titans Island, and they go back there. It's Dick Grayson and Red Arrow looking for an old artifact. It turns out it is the Dial H for Hero phone they were looking for. They bring it back, but there's a lot of tension between Dick Grayson and the rest of the team, specifically Starfire. It's never really explained. He does bust out Red X at the end. You find out Dick Grayson used the Red X persona, but somehow another version of Red X came out and he frees them because they're going to do something. Pretty confusing story. I don't recommend this one, but the art's really good. Very disappointing. I was really hoping for the Teen Titans to be good. I'm still hopeful that the Teen Titans Academy series in Infinite Frontier will be good, but I will not be continuing on this one because there was no hook for me whatsoever. Not even, there's another thing. It's not only is Dick Grayson apparently Deathstroke now, but Cyborg and Beast Boy have become one. They have merged, and they're Cybeast or something stupid like that. Not explained whatsoever. But apparently, when he goes out and uses his power, when he comes back, he's passed out, and they're gonna shoot him with the drill and wake. It's like this is silly. You can't introduce something like that without an explanation, and there is no explanation. A lot of stuff going on, but this is definitely not the bottom of the barrel. There are two comics worse than these middle tier. They're redeeming aspects of Teen Titans, Justice League, and Robin Eternal that I think people could enjoy about them. But these last two, I found nothing redeeming about. The second to the last worst one, I think, is Kara ZorEl Superwoman. What the hell is this? And what is this costume? Why is this looks? The art is intriguing by Marguerite Savage. That it looks good and it looks different, but it looks like if you wanted Cinderella to be a superhero, this would be your artist. Like, does that fit DC Comics? I don't know. It's not bad art, but I don't know. Is it DC Comics art? And then the character herself, this new version of Kara ZorEl Superwoman, like, who is she? She's apparently jealous. First, she was jealous of Clark Kent because he got to be Superman and the world embraced him and she had to sit on the sidelines. And then she was upset that John Kent became the heir to the Superman mantle. And I guess she thought it should have been her. So she removed herself and created a colony on the moon for displaced people from Earth. And she's really, she's like, feels really accomplished, but she still doubts herself or something. I think that's what the book is about. Does that sound like an exciting read to you? Because it wasn't to me. And we also, now I know a lot of people were worried that Future State was going to be woke. It was just going to be all this woke crap at left and right. That really hasn't been the case. But here in Kara ZorEl Superwoman, we might get a speech about privilege. And, it makes you roll your eyes. I definitely am not coming back for this. This is like a 1.5, 2-star comic. I did not enjoy this. I thought it was pretty much garbage. There you go. Marguerite Bennett, try harder because this sucked. But it was not the worst. The worst comic of the week, and I'm shocked by this because the introduction to Yara Flor was so strong in the first week. But this Dan Waters Superman Wonder Woman comic is awful. First of all, the art by Leila DeLuca. Look at the bottom right. How do you make Yara Flor ugly? And she is in this comic book. The character herself, yes, she is hot-headed. She doesn't always play by the rules. That was established in Wonder Woman. But here she comes off as petty, vindictive, and kind of a bad person. And then, in Future State, we got all these things like, obviously Gotham is like a prison city under the Magistrate. Metropolis, the crime in Metropolis is almost as bad as Gotham. We got all these things happening around the world. They're all terrible. And Wonder Woman's like knocking down helicopters because of the traffic. She's like takes this local politician and she's gonna like threatening to kill him or something because of the traffic. It feels like that might be a little bit below Yara Flor, Wonder Woman's pay grade. Am I wrong? It felt so vindictive. And then she made like the politician write on his helicopter that was crashed, I will not embezzle money. And then she made the pilot write like 100 times, I will not try to shoot Wonder Woman because he tried to shoot. That was probably wrong, but the story itself is just awful. There's actually 2 pages dedicated to John Kent waking up, shooting out with his eyeballs, good morning to everybody. These are very limited stories, very limited runs, very limited real estate to tell your story. And Dan Waters is wasting time with bullcrap like this. But the story is so bad, that was probably the highlight of the whole thing. There ends up, I guess, they're incorporating new mythology into DC mythology. If the DC mythology isn't confusing enough with Norse, Greek and Roman mythology, now we've got some Brazilian mythology. Apparently, the sun god is upset because there's a usurper, a fake sun that shows up, and it's affecting John Kent's abilities, but this new sun god was upset, and they end up going through like a sun dong measuring contest that was really stupid. this whole thing is stupid. Dane Waters should not be writing comic books. I don't know who he is, and if he's written comic books before, I almost guarantee you they're awful. Because this thing it's not as bad as The Flash. Probably not as bad as Superman and Metropolis. It's really close. It's like neck and neck. These Superman books, for the most part, have been absolute garbage so far. There has not been a winner yet. All of them have stunk to high heaven. Hopefully, Philip Kennedy Johnson brings it with Superman War of Worlds. That's like the last hope. But I'm telling you right now, if that thing stinks too, I'm not reading the new Superman Action Infinite Frontier because there's just no hope. Because they have no idea what to do with Superman or the Superman family. It is so bad. And this comic is terrible. How do you make Yara Flor ugly? Visually unappealing Yara Flor. Didn't think it was possible. Leela DeLuca pulled off the impossible. God, just looking at the character on the right, it's so embarrassing. I can't believe DC Comics published this with the probably the most important new character introduced in Future State. She's got a TV show coming up. She's got a new series already announced. I can't believe they would do that to the character. But that is it, folks. That is my take on Future State, Week 2, the good, the bad, and the ugly. Dark Detective, pretty darn good. Green Lantern, very fun story. Not sure that it's a Green Lantern story, but if you like space action adventure, that's going to be right in your wheelhouse. Teen Titans, Robin and Turtle, Justice League, middling, meandering titles. I don't recommend them, although I do think people will find things about them that are redeeming. But the Kara Zor-El Superwoman and Superman Wonder Woman were absolute trash. They were bad, really bad. So this was more in line with what I kind of expected out of Future State. We'll see with next week, but week 1 felt like an anomaly. This was a couple of things standing out, and most of it being meh and much worse. What do you guys think about Future State? Did you enjoy week 2? Let me know your thoughts in the comments section.